We're not going tomorrow. Anyways, now we got Nightwolf, Max Jackson, #1, Beneath the Mask.
Nightwolf, Max Jackson #1, Beneath the Mask. Max Jackson had always protected Jackson City from the shadows. As Nightwolf, he hunted mobsters, dismantled trafficking rings, and exposed corruption with silent precision. Criminals feared him. The underworld whispered about him. But Bruce had once told him something that stayed with him. A hero, sir, does not only protect the city at night, he builds it during the day. Max never forgot that. Tonight, however, he wasn't in armor. He stood in a sharply tailored charcoal suit inside the glass-walled conference chamber of Jackson Industries, overlooking the skyline. The city stretched outward, bridges, docks, industrial zones, neighborhoods still recovering from years of criminal influence. He wanted it cleaner, safer, stronger. And that meant helping without the mask. Across the table sat 2 visiting scientists from Coastal City, brought in for a collaborative environmental initiative. Dr. Daniel Rivers, marine biologist and hydrology specialist, calm, focused, sharp-eyed, and junior environmental engineer Adrian Vale, an air quality and atmospheric systems researcher with an intense analytical gaze. Max extended his hand. I appreciate you both coming. Jackson City's waterways and industrial emissions have been neglected for too long. Daniel Rivers nodded. Coastal City had similar problems. Toxic runoff nearly destroyed parts of our harbor years ago. It can be reversed, but it requires investment and long-term commitment. We have both, Max replied. Adrian Vale adjusted his glasses. Your proposal mentioned a multi-phase purification grid? Max activated the holographic projection in the center of the table. A 3D rendering of the city appeared, sections highlighted in red. Phase 1, Max said, targets water contamination in the eastern docks and the old Blackwater chemical corridor. Daniel's expression shifted slightly at the name. Blackwater, he repeated quietly. That facility's runoff data has been flagged in federal reports before. Max didn't react outwardly. He remembered dismantling operations there as Nightwolf. Yes, Max said smoothly. We plan to retrofit filtration systems beneath the river intake valves. I'd value your expertise. Daniel leaned forward, studying the projection. If we integrate adaptive filtration membranes and tidal kinetic flow systems, we could clean the harbor in under 5 years. Max smiled faintly. I was hoping you'd say something like that. Adrian spoke next. And the atmospheric initiative? The hologram shifted. Smog density patterns floated above industrial districts. We've designed high-altitude air scrubbing towers, Max explained. Low visual footprint, renewable powered. Adrian's eyes lit up with quiet excitement. If calibrated correctly, they could reduce particulate matter by 40% in the first year. That's the goal, Max replied. The 3 men stood there, 3 minds focused on rebuilding cities, unaware of what each had faced under different skies. Daniel Rivers had once become something else, something fluid and powerful in Coastal City's waters. Adrian Vale had transformed into living vapor after a catastrophic accident. And Max Jackson wore a wolf beneath the moonlight. Yet here, none of them knew. They were simply scientists and a businessman. Daniel straightened. You're not just doing this for PR, are you? Max met his eyes steadily. No, I'm doing it better than surviving. Adrian gave a small nod. Then we'll help. The meeting lasted 2 hours. By the end, contracts were drafted, research teams scheduled, and a joint environmental task force formed between Jackson Industries and Coastal City's scientific community. As Daniel and Adrian prepared to leave, Daniel paused. You know, he said thoughtfully, most billionaires don't invest in projects that won't show returns for decades. Max gave a faint, almost tired smile. Some returns aren't measured in profit. Daniel studied him for a moment, then nodded in quiet respect. After they left, Bruce entered the chamber silently. Productive meeting, sir? Yes, Max said, looking out at the river cutting through the city. Bruce folded his hands behind his back. You seem lighter. Max considered that. As Nightwolf, I stop harm, he said slowly. But today, I prevented it. Bruce's expression softened. Your parents would be proud, Master Jackson. Max didn't answer immediately. Outside, the sun began to dip below the skyline. Soon he would descend into the wolf cave. Soon, the armor would come on, Soon, criminals would learn again that Jackson City was protected. But for now, Max Jackson stood in the fading daylight, knowing that heroes are not only forged in battle, sometimes they are built in boardrooms. And somewhere in Coastal City, Daniel Rivers would return to the sea, and Adrian Vale would walk beneath open skies, unaware that the man they had just partnered with hunted in the night, unaware that they had just shaken hands with Nightwolf.
Anyways, now we move on to my last remake story, which is The Doctor number 0.
I can definitely write this as a dark vigilante origin story, but I'll adjust it slightly so it doesn't glorify detailed murder or provide step-by-step depictions. The tone will stay intense, psychological, and morally complex, focusing on Nathaniel's mind and code rather than graphic detail. Here's your story. The Doctor. Detroit never really sleeps. It hums, police sirens in the distance, streetlights flickering against cracked pavement, the low mechanical heartbeat of a city that's seen too much and expects worse tomorrow. Nathaniel Crowley stood beneath fluorescent lights in the Detroit Police Forensics Lab, latex gloves snapped tight around his wrists. Another body lay on the steel table before him. Male. Mid-40s. Prior convictions, trafficking, assault, extortion. Cause of death, clean, precise, almost elegant. The incisions were measured. The fatal wound exact, minimal struggle, no chaos, no frenzy, like surgery. Detective Morales leaned against the doorway. "Let me guess," he muttered. "The Doctor?" Nathaniel adjusted his glasses, leaning in closer to the wound as if studying it for the first time. "It would appear so," he said calmly. "The Doctor. That's what the streets called him. That's what the police called him. A ghost who only seemed to target the worst of Detroit's underbelly. Traffickers, abusers, monsters hiding behind money and influence. No fingerprints, no fibers, no witnesses, no mistakes." Nathaniel removed his gloves and placed them in biohazard disposal. No one noticed the faintest hint of a smile. Spencer Rogers stood under a chandelier in an abandoned theater downtown, smiling like a king. The seats had been removed. The stage now held a different kind of performance. Men and women stood in a row under dim light, frightened, silent. Auction numbers pinned to their clothing. Spencer adjusted his tailored suit and tapped the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, voice smooth and cultured, "tonight's offerings are exceptional." The crowd laughed softly. Nathaniel sat in the shadows of the balcony, unseen. He watched, he listened, and inside him something stirred. Spencer Rogers, as greedy as they come, and as monstrous too, rich, famous, came from money, and selling these poor innocent souls for who knows what, people who would use them for whatever pleasure, torture, entertainment. Nathaniel's jaw tightened. This man is a monster. Hell, who may be worse than I am? And I know I'm a monster. The gavel struck wood. The auction continued. Nathaniel memorized every face, every security exit, every guard rotation. He wasn't here to save anyone tonight. He was here to study. Nathaniel Crowley grew up in a quiet home with sharp edges. His father was a surgeon, disciplined, steady-handed, respected. His mother was a detective, relentless, intuitive, unafraid. From his father, Nathaniel learned anatomy, precision, control. From his mother, he learned patterns, motive, how to read lies in someone's eyes. But there was something else, something darker. He called it his dark passenger, a whisper beneath the surface, an urge, a hunger that surfaced when he saw injustice ignored. Only his father ever knew. Late at night, after difficult days at the hospital, his father would sit across from him at the kitchen table. "You don't get to choose what you are," his father once told him quietly, "but you can choose how you aim it." After that, the lists began. Men who hurt children, men who trafficked women, men who beat the innocent and bought their freedom. His father researched them, verified them, made sure there was no doubt. Only the worst, his father would say. If you must carry this burden, then let it mean something. That was Nathaniel's code. Only bad people, only monsters. The auction ended just after midnight. Luxury cars rolled away from the theater one by one. Spencer Rogers left last. Nathaniel followed at a distance in his unmarked sedan. Spencer's home sat behind iron gates in a wealthy suburb, hidden behind manicured hedges and security cameras. Nathaniel had already studied the blueprints. He entered silently. When Spencer realized he wasn't alone, it was already too late. "You don't understand who I am," Spencer said, backing toward his desk. Nathaniel's voice was calm, measured. "I understand exactly who you are." There was no rage in his eyes, no chaos, only purpose. The room remained quiet, controlled, clinical. And when it was over, Spencer Rogers lay still. No unnecessary harm, no spectacle, just precision. Like a surgeon finishing an operation, Nathaniel wiped the surface clean, removed any trace of himself, adjusted the scene just enough to send a message to those who would understand it. The doctor had made a house call. The next morning, Detroit police raided the abandoned theater. Anonymous tip. Detailed. Accurate. Detective Morales surveyed the terrified captives being escorted out. "Whoever sent that call," he muttered, "saved a lot of lives." In the forensics lab later that afternoon, Nathaniel stood over Spencer Rogers' body. Cause of death? Clean. Precise, professional. Morales sighed. "The doctor again." Nathaniel tilted his head slightly. "Seems that way." "You ever think," Morales added quietly, "that maybe he's not the worst thing in this city?" Nathaniel removed his gloves slowly. "I think," he said evenly, "that monsters don't disappear just because someone hunts them." He walked away, expression unreadable. Inside, the dark passenger was quiet, satisfied. For now. And as the city of Detroit hummed into another restless night, the doctor walked freely among them, unseen, unknown, and still very much operating.
Next is Robin Hood number 3.
Robin Hood number 3. Vertaxis Falls' evergreen city glittered at night, towers of glass and steel rising above streets that smelled of rain and corruption. From the highest ledge of the old Bellamy Financial Building, a hooded figure watched the chaos below. Robin Hood. He adjusted the green hood over his eyes and scanned the waterfront district through compact binocular lenses built into his mask. Cargo ships had been docking at Pier 17 for weeks under falsified manifests. Medical imports, industrial solvents, agricultural chemicals, none of it legitimate. Every trail led back to one name whispered in nightclubs and back alleys. Vertaxis. Real name, Count Alexander Virelli, a disgraced European nobleman who reinvented himself as a biochemical drug lord in Evergreen City. He wasn't just selling narcotics, he was engineering them. Hallucinogens that bent perception, serums that amplified fear, compounds that created dependence within hours. And like all tyrants, he ruled from above. Tonight, he was hosting a private gala aboard his yacht, the Sovereign Tide, anchored just offshore. Politicians, investors, criminal intermediaries, all gathered under chandeliers and string lights. Robin smiled faintly. Perfect. He fired a grappling arrow into the darkness and launched himself across the harbor wind, landing silently atop a shipping crane near the dock. Below him, armed guards in black tactical suits patrolled the perimeter. He dropped 2 smoke pellets. By the time the first guard coughed, an arrow struck the rifle from his hands. A second arrow pinned another man's sleeve to a crate. Robin descended like a phantom, staff spinning, disarming 2 more with swift, efficient strikes. He moved with purpose, never reckless, never cruel. Each man was zip-tied and left conscious. "Tell your count," Robin muttered to one. "His reign ends tonight." On the upper deck of the yacht, Count Alexander Virelli stood tall in a tailored crimson suit, silver streaks lining his dark hair. A monocle-like lens covered his right eye, glowing faint violet. A neurological implant, Vertaxis' signature invention. The lens pulsed as he surveyed the dance floor below. "Fear is the most addictive substance in the world," he often said, and he had perfected it. A guard rushed to his side. "Sir, there's an intruder." Vertaxis did not panic. He smiled. "Ah," he said smoothly. "The archer." He tapped the lens near his eye. It flared brighter. Prepare the serum. Robin landed on the yacht's lower deck, moving swiftly through corridors of polished mahogany and gold trim. He disabled cameras with pinpoint arrows. 2 guards charged him. He vaulted over one, used the staff to sweep the other's legs, and pinned both to the wall with non-lethal shock arrows. He reached the grand ballroom doors. Music played inside. He kicked them open. Gasps filled the room. Robin Hood stepped through drifting smoke from a flash pellet. Evening, he announced calmly. Auction's over. Guests scattered. Vertaxis stood at the far end, unfazed. Ah, the Count said, voice cultured and precise. The vigilante philanthropist. Robin walked forward, bow lowered but ready. You're poisoning this city. On the contrary, Vertaxis replied. I'm refining it. He pressed a small remote. The chandeliers exploded in violet light. The room began to spin. Robin staggered. The lens over Vertaxis's eye pulsed violently, projecting waves of neurological interference. The very air seemed distorted. Walls bent. Shadows moved independently. Vertaxis' serum mist released from hidden vents. Fear, the Count said, stepping closer, is a gift. It shows us who we truly are. Robin clenched his jaw. His vision fractured into shifting colors. His heartbeat thundered in his ears. But he had trained for this. He shut his eyes, slowed his breathing, listened. The hum of the yacht's engine, the shuffle of polished shoes, the faint click of a weapon being drawn. He fired without looking. The arrow struck the remote from Vertaxis' hand. Another arrow shattered the lens device over his eye. The violet glow died instantly. The room snapped back into focus. Vertaxis stumbled, fury replacing composure. You barbarian! He lunged, drawing a sleek blade from his cane. Robin met him halfway, staff against steel. They moved across the ballroom floor, elegance versus precision. Vertaxis was skilled but emotional. Robin was disciplined. The staff cracked against the Count's wrist, sending the blade skidding across marble. A final sweep knocked him flat. Robin pinned him with the end of his staff. It's over. Vertaxis glared up at him. You think cutting off one head ends anything? I have laboratories across continents. And now, Robin said evenly, pulling zip restraints from his belt, you'll have time to reflect on them. Police sirens wailed in the distance. Robin had already sent the evidence. Encrypted files, shipping records, financial trails. Everything needed to bury Count Alexander Varelli for life. As officers stormed the yacht, Robin disappeared over the railing, diving into the dark waters below. Hours later, news screens across Evergreen City flashed the headline, Criminal Mastermind Vertaxis Arrested in Massive Drug Bust. In a holding cell, stripped of his lens implant and tailored suit, Alexander Varelli stared at the concrete wall. For the first time in years, he felt fear, and somewhere high above Evergreen's skyline, a hooded figure watched the sunrise. Robin Hood didn't steal from the rich, he stole power from the corrupt, and tonight, Evergreen City breathed a little easier.
Now we got Green Torch number 1.
Green Torch number 1, the Great White Shark. Hal Ashford adjusted the controls of his flight rig as the wind whipped across the experimental aerodynamics course. He'd barely had time to enjoy being Green Torch, the alien ring on his finger pulsing faintly, reminding him of the responsibility it carried. A distress call crackled through the emergency comm channel, reports of ships being sunk off the coast of West Haven. Fishermen missing, vessels shredded as if by some colossal underwater predator. Hal didn't hesitate. With a leap and a blast of his ring's power, he soared into the sky, green flames flickering along his gauntlets. He arrived at the harbor to find chaos. Jagged pieces of wrecked ships strewn across the waves, cries of terrified sailors echoing over the water. Then he saw it. A massive shadow beneath the waves, moving faster than it should have. Green Torch narrowed his eyes through the ring's visual enhancements. The reports hadn't exaggerated. This was no ordinary shark. Something about its posture, upright, humanoid, massive dorsal fin, jagged teeth the size of his fist, told him it was intelligent. The water roiled violently as the creature breached the surface, roaring with an almost human-like intelligence. Its gray-blue skin glistened like steel, muscles rippling with raw power. Green Torch landed on the pier. The ring glowed brighter as he focused. "You must be the great white shark," he said calmly. "I don't want to hurt you, but I can't let you harm innocent people." The shark lunged, splashing onto the pier with inhuman agility. It swung massive clawed hands, each strike enough to tear timber and steel. Hal dodged with a burst of speed, landing blows that barely phased it.
Okay, this is a remade of a villain that I had years ago. The original Great White Shark was a shark who was king of the ocean. And he was a Night Wolf villain, but I didn't want him to be a, Night Wolf villain anymore. And I realized that from all my older heroes, which were my original heroes were Archer, who became Robin Hood, Nightwolf, who has Nightwolf, who had 2 remakes when it was just him by himself. And then on the 3rd remake, this is the 4th one of the story, but on the 3rd remake, it was Nightwolf, the Archer who became Robin Hood, Amazing Man who became Skyforge, Warrior, Green Torch, Speedo who became Velocity and a teenager, who else was there? Waterman, The Mist. There was a Martian character who then became Changeling in this story, but Changeling was a Beast Boy type character in the original story, but I just decided not to use them. And Lightning Bug was in my original story, but he wasn't named Tyler. That's new. He didn't have a name, I don't think, in the original one, but he was a teenage hero. And then characters I haven't brought in yet, or maybe not bringing in, that I remember, are Hawk Guy, who is a Hawkman-like character, Nocturne and Blue Jay, who were Nightwolf sidekicks. And villains that I may bring in or may not bring in is the Creeper, who, yes, his name is the name of the Batman villain, but he is a creeper, an actual one. He watches his victims before he strikes, and he was the Jack Ryder-like character. So Grant Mercer would become Creeper if I bring that character back. There was the Brain, who was a robot with a female human scientist brain in its body. There was Daydog, who was a joke villain, and he was Dog Fiend. Because get it, Daydog, opposite to Night. Yeah. Professor Wolf, Mad Jack, Nightmare, and Dollmaker. There was. Those are all the villains that I remembered that I haven't brought back yet. Anyways, back to the story.
The ring pulsed in his hands. "Time to step it up," he muttered. He unleashed a blast of concussive green energy. The humanoid shark recoiled, thrashing in pain, but still relentless. Hal realized brute force alone wouldn't stop it. The creature was too strong, too fast. He needed strategy. Dodging another swipe, Hal scanned the environment. Cranes, steel beams, water pumps, everything could be a weapon. Timing his jumps with precision, he struck the creature's legs with concussive bursts, slowing its balance. The shark roared in frustration, lunging again. Hal rolled, aimed a controlled beam at the water, creating a wall of vapor and steam. The creature lunged blindly, giving Hal the opportunity he needed. He leapt high into the air, ring glowing fiercely. With a focused strike, he blasted the shark's dorsal fin. The creature howled, spinning uncontrollably into the harbor, crashing into the water with a violent splash. Green Torch landed on the pier, panting slightly. The shark thrashed below, struggling to swim but unable to rise fully. The ring's energy had immobilized it temporarily. "You're powerful, but this city doesn't belong to predators," Hal said firmly. "I can help you, but only if you leave." The great white shark stared at him, eyes intelligent, almost sorrowful. Slowly, it sank beneath the waves, disappearing into the dark depths. Green Torch watched until the waters calmed. Fishermen began pulling survivors from lifeboats, grateful and wide-eyed. Hal smiled faintly beneath his mask. Another threat neutralized. Another reminder that being a hero wasn't just about strength. It was about control, precision, and knowing when to strike. And somewhere beneath the waves, the king of the sharks would remember the man in green who had bested him. Green Torch lifted off, soaring back toward the city lights of West Haven, ready for whatever would come next. Characters in this story: Hal Ashford, Green Torch, the great white shark, humanoid metahuman shark, antagonist, fishermen, civilians, briefly. If you want, I can continue with Green Torch number 2, introducing his first multi-villain confrontation, including Luminex Ravager or Noctira Wraithwing, tying it into the alien threat arc. Do you want me to do that next?
No, thank you. Next, we have Nightwolf Stories number 0, the second subline of Nightwolf Stories that I'm making, because the main one is just called, the main comic line is just called Nightwolf. Then there was the special called Nightwolf Max Jackson, and the other one, which is this one, Nightwolf Stories, which is basically stories that kind of wouldn't fit in for the main. Sometimes it's stories that wouldn't fit in for the main series, or it's to be used as like a break in between what happened in between the main series. So yeah. Yeah. And then next is the list of stories again, from Lightning Bug number 1 to Nightwolf Stories number 0, the timeline that these new stories would go in, and then a list of characters so far.
Nightwolf Stories number 0, New Threats in Jackson City. The streets of Jackson City were quiet, almost eerily so. After the chaos with Inferno and Victor Halden, and the events that brought Velocity back to Evergreen City, the remnants of destruction had been painstakingly cleaned. The old movie theater that had been set ablaze, the chemical plant wrecked by Inferno, even the gentleman's club where minor collateral damage had occurred. All cleared and restored by the shadowy corporation known as Helix Dominion. Nightwolf perched atop a building near the waterfront, watching the city breathe again, the hum of the neon lights reflecting off the harbor waters. His cowl's AR interface flickered with crime reports and activity logs, but tonight, all was calm. Until the call came. A voice crackled in his ear. Skyforge. "Max, I've been thinking," said Ethan Calloway's familiar tone, calm but urgent. "Maybe it's time we put a team together. I already have my eyes on 2 potential allies, Waterman and the Mist." Nightwolf's jaw tightened beneath the mask. "That's a good idea. But if you do this, you need to look into Robin Hood and Velocity, too. They're not exactly local, but they're effective." "Got it," Skyforge replied. "I'll keep an eye on them." Nightwolf cut the connection, leaving only the faint echo of static. He glanced at the streets below. His mission wasn't over. There was a new player on the streets, a dangerous one. The call had contained fragments of sightings, witness accounts, a man glowing, crackling with electricity, leaving destruction in his wake. Jackson City's emergency grid had reported surges in several districts, followed by complete blackouts. The hero recognized him instantly. Volt. Darius Kane. Once a senior electrical engineer at Jackson Industries, specializing in high-output urban power grids and experimental energy redistribution systems. Ambitious, brilliant, and meticulous, until an accident in one of the experimental energy cores transformed him. His body became pure electricity, a living conduit of destructive power. A man no longer bound by flesh, capable of frying circuits, igniting fires, and striking with blinding speed. Nightwolf knew the danger of someone like this. One misstep could take out an entire block of the city. He tracked Volt to an abandoned power substation near the docks. Sparks danced across the walls, and the air smelled faintly of ozone. Volt hovered above the ground, electricity arcing across his body in jagged bolts, illuminating his distorted humanoid silhouette. Darius Kane, Nightwolf said from the shadows, voice calm but commanding. This city isn't yours to destroy. Volt turned, eyes crackling with energy. Max Jackson, he hissed, voice warping with static. I am power itself. You cannot stop me. The first strike came without warning. A bolt of pure electricity arcs toward Nightwolf. He rolled behind a steel container, sparks melting the edges of the metal. With his suit's enhancements, he launched a grappling hook at Volt, trying to destabilize him. Volt flickered and teleported short distances, his body streaming with energy, making him unpredictable and dangerous. Nightwolf adapted quickly, using rooftops, alleyways, and shadowed spaces to stay just out of reach. The battle tore across the district, transformers exploding, power lines hissing, neon signs flickering violently. Volt's attacks were relentless, but Nightwolf had his own edge: preparation, gadgets, and the calm precision of a predator hunting prey. He created a trap using insulated steel cables stretched across a scaffolding. Volt, blinded by his own energy output, didn't notice the snare until it was too late. A pulse of EMP from Nightwolf's gauntlets disrupted his control just long enough for Nightwolf to subdue him with reinforced taser cuffs and grounded conduits that drained the excess electricity. Volt fell to the ground, sparks fizzing harmlessly as he writhed. Nightwolf cowl. He surveyed the wreckage around him. His suit had taken damage, scratches in the armor from the arcing electricity, minor scorches along the gauntlets. Time to go home, he muttered. He returned to the wolf cave, suit battered but operational. Volt was contained in a temporary energy null field designed by Bruce and his technical contacts. Nightwolf monitored the city feeds, ensuring no residual effects of Volt's rampage remained. The city was quiet again, for now, but Nightwolf knew this was only the beginning. Skyforge's words echoed.
Oh yeah, I forgot to say, Bruce has technological contacts because one, he was in the war, multiple, actually, and two, he used to manage Jackson Industries funds when when Max's parents would go away when they were younger on trips. And well, Jackson Industries technology is what is used at the most prisons and asylums in Jackson City to upgrade them.
In his mind, a team of heroes forming. Waterman, The Mist, maybe even Robin Hood and Velocity. If Jackson City survived the coming storm, it would need more than one guardian, and Nightwolf would be there. Always. Characters in this story: Max Jackson, Nightwolf, Skyforge, Ethan Calloway, voice only, Darius Kane, Volt, Bruce, mentioned as tech support at Wolf Cave, Helix Dominion, mentioned as cleaning restoration crew. If you want, I can continue with Nightwolf Stories number 1, showing the aftermath of Volt's capture and how Nightwolf begins coordinating with Skyforge, Waterman, and The Mist for the first time. Do you want me to do that next?
I mean, it wouldn't be Skyforge for the first time since they had a team-up story, but if you're talking about all four of them together, then yeah, that would be for the first time. Oh yeah, I was also going to do World's Greatest number 3 as just a Velocity story, but I'm like, wait a minute, Velocity and Robin Hood are both in Everest Green City, so I should just make it to where they're both in the story. Anyways, now, the list of stories we are, I'm just gonna have the thing go over it, and then the timeline order, and then
Here is a complete list of your stories, starting from Lightning Bug number 1 down to Nightwolf Stories 0, along with the characters that appear in each. Snub 1. Lightning Bug number 1 characters. Tyler Navarro, Lash Lightning Bug. Tyler's mother, unnamed, thugs in black suits with red visors and red dragon emblem. Lightning Bug number 2 characters. Tyler Navarro Lightning Bug, Mark Mercer Werewolf. Shasha 3, Nightwolf Max Jackson number 1. Characters, Max Jackson, Daniel Rivers, Waterman, identity unknown to Max. Adrian Vale the Mist, identity unknown to Max. Bruce number 4, the Dr. Zero characters, Nathaniel Crowley, the Doctor, Spencer Rogers, Auctioneer, Detroit Police, unnamed officers, Nathaniel's father, surgeon deceased, Nathaniel's mother, detective. None of 5, Robin Hood 3 characters, Count Alexander Varelli, Vertaxis. Number 6, Green Torch number 1 characters, Alan Holt, Green Torch, the Great White Shark, Humanoid Shark King. Nightwolf Stories number 0.
Wrong. Green Torch. It's not Alan Holt, it's Hal. But then again, there's 2 people named Green Torch in my stories.
0. Characters, Max Jackson, Nightwolf, Ethan Calloway, Skyforge, Darius Kane, Volt, Bruce, Helix Dominion, Organization, Waterman, mentioned, The Mist, mentioned, Robin Hood, mentioned, Velocity, mentioned. If you would like, I can now create a...
Oh yeah, Helix Dimension is going to be like AIM. But instead of being led by a dude in a giant robot suit, they're going to be led by the main villain of Saga 1, the Red Dragon, who, yes, those mercenaries also work for. And yes, Helix is also a normal company as well that does actually do its job which is cleaning up destruction. But they do have a, nefarious side, is what I'm saying. Anyways, timeline order here of Part 2 of Saga 1.
Here is the timeline order for Part 2 of Saga 1, separated into alternate timeline and main timeline, exactly as you structured it. Part 2, Saga 1 timeline. Alternate timeline. These stories are completely separate from the main continuity. 1. Strange Stories number 1, Part 2, The Explorer Wandering Through a City Filled with Strange Creatures. 2. Strange Stories number 1, Part 3, The Man Trapped Inside Shifting Television Commercials. 3. Strange Stories number 2, Part 2, The Female Japanese Samurai Fighting Mercenaries in the Mountains. 4. Doom of Hell number 0, The Armored Marine with the Red Crystal Chest Core Fighting Demons in Hell. Main Timeline, Ancient Era Before All Heroes. 1. The Dragon Scales number 1, The Medieval Dragon Metahuman Warrior. Takes place centuries before Lightning Bolt and the Justice Syndicate era. After World's Greatest number 1, Nightwolf and Skyforge. The following stories take place after that major team-up event. 2. Strange Stories number 1, Part 1, Verdant Warden, The Root King's Nature Perspective. 3. Strange Stories number 2, Part 1, The Paranormal Investigator Story. Shaft Modern Hero Era, Post World's Greatest number 1. 4. Nightwolf number 3, Foxwoman Takedown, Theo Granger Killed, Daniel Mercer Becomes Commissioner. 5. Nightwolf 3.2, Nightwolf Places His Trophy and Stops Dragon Mercenaries. 6. Robin Hood number 2, Roman Val, The Sovereign and Vertaxis Operations. 3.3, Trophy Reflection Story. 8. Grant Mercer number 1, Reporting on Foxwoman and Police Alliance. 9. Case File number 1, Remake, Luminex Ravager, Specimen 001. 10. Case File number 2, Remake, Noctira Wraithwing, Specimen Mo 2. 11. Green Torch number 0.3, Hal defeats Specimen 001 and 002. World's Greatest number 2, Nightwolf and Robin Hood versus Roman Vale and Foxwoman. 13. World's Greatest number 2.2, Foxwoman Return to Ironcrest Penitentiary. Roman escapes to Evergreen City. 14. Nightwolf number 4, Victor Halden's Criminal Operations Exposed. 15. World's Greatest number 3, Nightwolf, Robin Hood, and Velocity versus Inferno and Victor Halden. Roman Vale released on bail, end credit reveal. 16. Lightning Bug number 117, Lightning Bug number 2, Full Moon Fallout. 18. Nightwolf, Max Jackson number 1. 19, The Doctor number 0. 20, Robin Hood number 3 for Taxus Falls. 21, Green Torch number 1. 22, Nightwolf Stories number 0, Volt defeated. Skyforge considering forming a team, possibly Waterman in the Mist, set up for future major crossover arc.